Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm continuing my video series on magic today, and today's topic will cover some of the moral or spiritual dilemmas that you can run into when you're trying to incorporate magic into your regular spiritual practices and reconciling it with other parts of the spiritual path. And I'm also going to talk about some of the pitfalls that you can face, some of the traps that you can fall into if you're practicing magic regularly and you're not diligent about it. So to start off with, what are some of the kinds of things that can seem like a tension with other parts of our spiritual life when we're engaged in magic? Well, perhaps the most glaring thing of all is that, and you would have picked up on this from my earlier videos on this channel if you've been around for that long, that when you're pursuing a spiritual path, a path of spiritual development, the goal really there is to see through materialism and recognize that grasping after things in the material world is futile, it's a dead end, it won't bring you satisfaction. Developing attachments to things, grasping at things, craving things, it's all stuff that keeps us trapped in a very limited, confined way of being. And in order to touch that which is transcendent, which is divine, which is beyond all that, we need to get past that at some point. And far from helping us get past that, it seems as though magic is something that would just feed that craving, feed that sense of grasping after things in the material world. So how can we practice something like magic and reconcile that with the overall goal, the overarching goal of much spiritual practice? And you might come across people who do have that attitude. Well, if you're so spiritual, if you're so focused on the divine and getting past materialism and dependence on the material world to satisfy yourself, then why are you performing magic? But here's the thing. We might be trying to touch something that's higher than this realm, but we still live here. We still live in the physical world. And in order to keep moving on to the next thing, we need to survive in this world. And that means that we need to have access to all of the amenities of physical existence that will allow us to survive and even thrive. Particularly when we're just getting started on the spiritual path. We're not going to be like the Tibetan monk who goes up into the mountains and doesn't have to eat for days, and doesn't have to drink any water for days, and can just meditate wearing very little clothing in the snow and raise their body temperature using mind over matter and not die from exposure. We most of us are not at that point, and we need to start somewhere, and we need to start at a point where we're still going to be dependent, very dependent on the material world for our own well-being and for our own survival. And that's something we just have to acknowledge. We're going to be at a point where we're still very dependent on the material world for our survival, for our sense of well-being, whether we like it or not. And we will have less of a dependence on material things, material goals as time goes on. But at the start, we need to have a certain level of comfort and a certain level of well-being in order to really be able to devote enough attention and enough of our emotional energy and psychological energy on something else, i.e. on spiritual pursuits. There's lots of reasons why someone might want to get something. One of those reasons is because of craving, because they believe they need something that they don't really need, and it's really just the result of an obsession or a delusional way of thinking, that they think that thing is important. But sometimes people want things out of necessity, that because they know that they need to obtain that thing to fulfill some sort of basic need in their life so that they can keep going on and continue to function normally. Some people want things just for fun, just because they enjoy it and they want to obtain something for a recreational purpose to have a good time, and that's fine. I mean, we've got to have fun while we're here. There's got to be a little bit of spice to life as well, and you can enjoy the good things about living in the material world. You can enjoy the good things that this world has to offer without becoming completely mesmerized by it. And so when we start to shed all of those assumptions, all of those prejudices that we might have had against any kind of material gain for our own benefit while we're on the path, then we really start to see things in a more open sort of fashion, and we really start to see things for what they are and the reason for everything in our life. A lot of people who are spiritual, they come from a particular class background. They tend to be middle to upper class kind of people. And the reason I bring that up is because they tend to be quite comfortable. They're born into situations where the physical world's already taken care of. They're always going to be comfortable. They're always going to have money if they need it. They may not need to work, depending on how well off they are. But they'll certainly have the resources to take more time off and to do more of the things that they enjoy without it being too stressful and putting too much pressure on other parts of their life. And then this is where largely people that are into spirituality have come from historically, and these are the same people that are telling everybody else that the material world isn't important and you shouldn't worry about it. But that's really coming from a place of pride and a place of ignorance. If you've never understood what it means to struggle to make ends meet, then you've got no idea what it's like for those people, and you're not really in a position to judge them. You know, it's a difficult process to try and get to a point in life where we can be comfortable and not worry quite as much about the future. You know, if we're really going to be compassionate towards other people and understanding towards other people, we need to understand that we can't just all be detached from reality and just hope that God will sort it out for us. Some of us will crash and burn if we do that, and we need to focus a certain amount of time and energy on obtaining things in the physical world. And once we have built that foundation in the physical world, then we can launch on to something beyond the physical. And so that's when magic becomes important, and practical magic becomes important and is completely reconcilable with a spiritual path if we just don't have an unbalanced view of how to practice spirituality. Now, having said that, once you learn how to use magic or the law of attraction and you realize just how much power there is in that, that can be a source of, let's say, temptation to just start to live a lifestyle of extreme gratification of desire. Like everything that you could possibly want is now yours, and you're going to just get everything you can because you can get it. And demonstrating how great and powerful you are. There's a real danger in that. If we go down that path with magic, we're going to turn into complete narcissists. We're going to feed the ego instead of diminishing it, and we're going to just create an idol of our own personality. You see this with celebrity culture all the time. You give people too much fame, too much money, whatever it is, and they just become incredibly self-absorbed, entitled human beings who only think about themselves and cause a lot of damage to people around them. And that's not something that we want to become as a spiritual person. We want to be better. We want to try and work on our problems and work on our shortcomings to become a better version of ourselves. And when we're faced with situations of adversity, we're sort of forced to do that. We have to make do with what we have. And that tends to cause us to become wiser. But if you take away that pressure and you can just lead a hedonistic life where you don't have to answer to anyone, then that opportunity for growth is gone unless you intentionally seek it out. Related to this, there can be the danger of people with magic deciding that they want to use that to undermine the free will of other people, to exercise undue influence over other people's will and manipulate other people. And magic can be used in that way, and it can be used to harm people as well. And I don't mean protective spells or reflective spells in self-defense. I mean, baleful magic to get back at people who have offended someone's ego in some way. And if you believe in the inherent dignity of the human being and that everybody should be able to go through life free and without their individual agency being interfered with, then that should just be completely off limits. And there are consequences if you believe that because you have magical power, you're entitled to treat other people in that way, to be predatory towards other people. I'm not talking about the Wiccan Rede, the law of three, where whatever you send out comes back to you exactly as you've sent it out 3 times. I don't think it's as literal as that, and I don't think, frankly, the universe really cares to that extent, whether or not bad things happen to good people or vice versa. But what you will tend to find is that people who are antisocial, in the sense that they just use other people or attack other people, and they make a habit of that, eventually they will turn against the wrong person and they'll get back exactly what they've put out, possibly worse, and there will be consequences for their actions, and they'll burn all of their bridges, and when the time comes when they're vulnerable and they need help, help won't be forthcoming. And so that is how negative actions, including magical actions, tend to have blowback. Another thing to watch out for is getting stuck in a fantasy land. So with magic, particularly if you're engaging in forms of magic that aren't quite as practical, that are more ephemeral. So I'm thinking about using magic to explore a certain path on the tree of life, or perhaps an ether in the Enochian system, or to contact some kind of god or something like that. In all of that, those kind of scrying type workings, visionary type workings, until you've developed that ability, it's very easy for the mind to hijack the vision and tell itself what it wants to hear. And so you can believe that you're contacting some higher intelligence when in fact you've just succeeded in contacting your own ego. But you've deceived yourself into thinking that it's some higher power beyond you. And then you start to believe things about yourself that are grandiose, that are unrealistic. You might even create an entire alternate reality where you're somebody powerful and important. But it's all delusion, quite often. And if we create enough of a fantasy around ourselves, enough of a mythos around ourselves, we can get stuck in a fantasy world of our own making, because we're more important in that world than in this world. And so we neglect this world and our place in it. And that's very unhealthy. And if there's no way of testing those visions, because it's all just happening in your head. It's very hard to hold yourself to account unless you've learnt to distinguish between the subtle difference between authentic revelation and when it's just part of your own mind interfering. One easy way of telling false revelation from true revelation is if you contact some higher power and they tell you something and you just don't get it until several years later when you're like, then that's probably authentic revelation. If something tells you something which your personality resists, just doesn't want to hear it, doesn't want to acknowledge it, that's probably genuine revelation. But if, say for example, you're a Thelemite and you're trying to contact the secret chiefs and they show up and then they tell you that you are the child of the prophet that was predicted in the book of the law, or you are the one true reincarnation of Aleister Crowley, or you are the world teacher and you need to tell every lodge in the world that they must accept you as the world teacher, then it's probably not true. Look at your circumstances. Look at the circumstances of your life, what you've actually accomplished, and see if it fits with what you've been told about who you really are. And if there's a discrepancy there, if there's a wide gulf between the idea of who you really are and the reality, then it's probably not true. But you'd be surprised how many people there are who go down that track in certain occult circles. One final thing that I would caution against is getting stuck on the practical stuff. So it can be a lot of fun to get all sorts of things with practical magic, and it can enrich your experience of life and put you in better stead to be happy and content. But if your practice doesn't ever go beyond just getting things in the material world, it becomes really repetitive and pointless and kind of empty. And magic is a spiritual gift. It gives you the potential to explore all kinds of horizons of the human experience and to change yourself and transform yourself in truly remarkable ways, including spiritual ways. And it opens up entire realms to you that you didn't know you could access before, entire levels of the human experience, I should say, which bring you to somewhere that's so much higher than the level that you're operating at now. And if you have such an incredible gift like magic, why would you squander it on just getting things in the material world? It's kind of a waste, and it's a wasted potential. And the more you practice, the more you'll realize that. When I first started off in my magical practice, I was very much focused on becoming somebody who could have influence over the physical world and have mastery over the physical world and be able to get all of the things that I needed. But as time went on, I became less and less interested in practical magic. I'd done that, I'd experienced that, I'd got a lot of the things that I'd wanted, and there were less new things that I wanted because I was starting to focus on spiritual goals a lot more. And so my magical practice over time has evolved to become much more centered on visionary work, scrying, angelic forms of magic, and I'll still do a practical working from time to time if there's something that I need, but it's primarily focused on trying to understand the mysteries of the universe. And I don't think that I'll ever go back. And if you stick with magic for a long time and you grow as a magician, you'll probably find the same happens with you as well, in terms of the kinds of workings that you prioritize. It's a good sign when it happens. So that's my advice on some of the things to watch out for when you're engaging in a magical practice, and some of the things to consider. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Leave your comments down below if you've got an opinion on this topic. If you like what I had to say and you'd like to give a bit more support to what I'm doing, hit that subscribe button. And thank you again for listening. I'll see you next time.